Hey there, Floss Tube. This is Cathy, the hands-on designer. I am wearing my apron today, so that means I'm here in the studio to film a tutorial for how to finish one of my newest releases. This came out in January of 21, so just a couple months ago, of First Frost, my two little snowman, kind of primitive snowman pillows. As we talked about in the video, the original video with Mr. HOD, you know, these can be finished in so many different ways. And I just happened to, my original vision for them was these cute little pillows. You can see they both fit in my hand. So I tuck mine into a little tray that I keep on my dining room table that I change out seasonally. And I just wanted just a fun little snowman to kind of tuck in there. I know a couple people had, quite a few people had a hard time seeing them as snowmen. So the good news is they're just adorable little designs that can be finished any number of ways. And I'm really starting to see those out there. So make sure you hashtag hands-on design. I'm just one of me, so no S on the end. I love seeing you finish them like this. I love seeing your alternative finishes. So, but I said I would do a little tutorial about how to make the pillow. This really is just a pillow. It's just kind of a funny shaped pillow. But it was definitely my vision for it. So I want to give you a little background before we go into the tutorial. So you're probably thinking, where in the heck did she get that idea? I mentioned I've been designing this one for a while. I kind of would work on it and then I let it go. And then probably the original vision for it came, this is a table runner. Did anybody make this? This was a really popular table runner back in the day, so to speak. I think I made it, I probably made this about 21, 22 years ago. It was a kit in my local quilting shop. I do not have the pattern. I do not know who it was. So if you ask, I have no clue. But it was a fun project and I just really enjoyed it. And I pull it out every year and I decorate after Christmas, when I, put the greenery away and I bring out the snowmen. This little guy comes out and I have the perfect little table. I just love the shape. And of course, if you follow me, you know by now, I look at something and I go, how could I do something with that in cross stitch? So you're starting to recognize the shape a little bit. So like I said, I don't have my pattern anymore. I actually did spend a good day looking for it because I wanted to see kind of the general shape. And I got a little frustrated when I couldn't find it. And I thought, well, I couldn't use their pattern anyway. It's their pattern. So I have to kind of come up with one on my own. But so anyway, so for those of you that go, where in the heck did you think of that? Yes, this guy has eyes and a nose, a little more obvious a snowman, artistic privilege. So that's where it came from. So I'm going to set that aside. And so as I said, this went through so many iterations. I started just drawing. I thought it would be funny if you might want to see some of this. Maybe you don't. I don't know. I won't take long with it. But I save every scrap of paper, because you just never know. And I started with all kinds of funny drawings like shapes. I had this one going for a while. It looked really weird. But I was like playing with shapes on my computer. I think I did end up doing that one. Hold on, I've got them all here somewhere. Yeah, I did end up doing that shape. No. I actually did cut him out on fabric. He did not work. He didn't make the cut, so to speak. And then I did this little guy. He was I thought he might be it for a while. And then I made a fabric one, and then I made a linen one, because linen finishes differently than cotton fabric. And I made that little guy, and I was using scraps that I had. And I actually even went to the point where I stuffed him, and I showed it to a few people and they just kind of went, huh. I'm like, yeah, that's not it. So I actually took the stuffing out and I reused it in the models, because I stuff with Woolfelt wool roving, and that stuff is precious. So anyway, but I kept this because I thought, well, people might want to see the process. But anyway, so there was that. That was no good. Then I finally came up. I kept refining it. Honestly, I thought, I can't get the shape. So maybe let's go to the design, because the design, when I was working on this guy, it was completely different, totally different colors. That was my influence on the colors. It was more snowflakes, no houses, no reindeer. It's like it was there, but it wasn't just quite there. So I put it to bed for a little bit. And then I said, all right, color palette. Let's start with the color palette. So I had a bunch of colors pulled, but then I kind of culled it down as I got working on the design. I culled it down to these guys. I just, they're just interesting. I like playing with color. Color doesn't always have to be in this. Color that works together doesn't always have to be in the same color family. Like I have a couple of beiges in here, some that are gray, some that are gold. But it did what I wanted it to do. It just kind of, it's a little bit of the unexpected. And that's what I love about playing with color. Okay. So I had my color palette, and then I realized, because in my head, this was actually the color fabric it was going to be to begin with. So I abandoned that. Actually, I was talking with a friend and she said, why are you going with that color? That's not you. And I was like, okay, I thought it was me, but apparently it's not. So then I thought, I like those colors on white, or antique white in this case. And well, aren't snowmen, well, unless you're using dirty snow, their snow is white. So then I fiddled some more with, pattern pieces, cutting, adding seam allowances, that kind of thing, until I ended up with this shape. And then, okay, so this shape happened first. Then I realized I wanted, this was the design first. This was the first design, but I had all these fun little pieces left over. And that's when I was like, well, why don't we have two snowmen? Why not? Hey, little snowman village. So when I found out, I didn't think this design would work on that well. I ended up switching completely. Y'all got to see the process sometime. I don't know. It's frightening. So anyway, so this design ended up working on here. And I think I talked about it in my one video. You'll notice the bottom of this guy is round and the bottom of this guy is not. I'll talk about that a little bit in the finishing part of that one, of the First Frost row. We're going to talk first about First Frost deer, and obviously that's because it's got a deer in it. But I wanted one that kind of had that flat bottom, because like I said, I put him into my a little trough kind of thing on my dining room table, and he just sits there nestled among the pine cones and the snowflakes, and I just switch him out, that kind of thing. So that I ended up with this guy. So here we go. I'm going to, did I go? I've got like a mess on here as usual, but anyway, so that's the pattern. If you're playing along at home, that's what the pattern looks like. The front cover, that's First Frost. And so I'm going to actually stop here, turn the camera down, and kind of show you some of what I've got going. This is probably going to be a little choppier than some, because there's a little more sewing involved. And again, anywhere I sew, and if you don't have a machine, or sewing machines frighten you, which they shouldn't, they really shouldn't, you just, you can do a little hand stitching. It works. It works. So I'm going to clear my space a little bit, and then I'm going to see if I can get my little thingy to work this time. And I'm going to keep talking and not have that goofy look on my face. Nope, didn't work. Okay, so here we are. We're going to get ready to work on the, this one is called, make sure I've got it right, the First Frost Deer. And as I said, you can tell it's the First Frost Deer because it's got the deer in it. Now, if you really like the shape of this one, the First Frost row, but you like the pattern of this one, they basically would fit. This would probably go off the edges a little bit more, but you could also widen out your pattern a little bit, that type of thing. But we're going to talk about this because that's how I've got it finished on the cover. So I used, okay, I've got my 32 count antique white Belfast. It's the DMC that's listed on the chart. I use this pretty fabric on the back. There's so many, a lot of people, there's so many different great fabrics out there right now. It's kind of surprising to see that this is kind of that red, but I found this, I'll tell you what the line is here in a moment, but it had the blue, it had the browns, had a little touch of gray in it, or gray blue, and then that red, that I don't know, salmony red, which was perfect for that color. So I was really tickled when I found this this line of fabric at my local quilt shop. It is by it's called Tahoe Ski Week by Mara Penny, and that's distributed by MODA. And of course, so that's the fabric that's on the back there. And it's also the fabrics that I used in the other snowmen, which we'll show here in a little bit. And so you can see these all, that's what I love about working with a line like that, is they all look pretty. So, all right, we're gonna get talking about this. And because I didn't stitch another one, here's my, can you see that? There's my stitching. All right, I even put an exclamation point on it, just so you know that's my stitching. Now, this is actually muslin. Normally when I do these videos, I use like a linen scrap, but let me tell you, linen is such a hot commodity right now. I am not using any of my linen for scrap. I'm holding on to that stuff. So I can demo with the cotton muslin. It looks very similar in nature to the Belfast. You can do this with an even weave. You can also do this with Aida. I'd say most of my designs are very Aida friendly. So I did mark on here the approximate area of my stitching, like what's on that. So what I want to do, when I do pillows, in most cases, I do line the back of my stitched area with a lightweight fusible interfacing. It can go by different names: lightweight, featherweight. The shop where my local quilt shop, they actually have the bolt labeled t-shirt quilt interfacing, because it's what, and you can just kind of see, it's very pliable, it's very thin, and it's got a nubby side and it's got a smooth side. So I cut a piece, I'm going to turn this over, this is my stitching side, I'm going to turn it over, and I cut a piece that was the size approximately, I didn't want any overhanging, but the size of my piece of linen. And I'm going to, and that's nubby side down, I've got my little iron over here just off camera, so I'm going to attach that very quickly. I've had several questions recently about the fusible. They say, people ask, are you, can you burn the piece? Will it melt? Well, the one thing you need to kind of know with some of the fusibles is that your iron does not need to be on the highest setting. And then what I like to do is I put the iron down in a spot and then I leave it. I don't, go back and forth like that. But you don't want to leave it there so long you scorch it. But I kind of just count to 5 quickly in my head, and there you go. So that's my stitching side. Can you see where I said stitching? And then the back. So obviously then this is still very bendable. It doesn't make it stiff, but what it does do is, as we're cutting, it helps keep any linen from unraveling. All right, so then what you need to do is you need to go to the website, and under the tutorial section on handsondesign.biz, that's B-I-Z, not .com, you'll see a template in the tutorial section for both of the snowman shapes. And you want to print those out. And as you print them, every once in a while, printers, depending on whether you're printing from your phone, your iPad, a computer, laptop, they can change the size somewhat depending on what your settings are. So I did put on there some measurements, that this is approximately 8.5 inches wide at the widest, and then 6 inches tall at the tallest. So you'll want to adjust your pattern accordingly if when you print it and you cut it out with your paper scissors, it doesn't measure that. This does include seam allowances. All right. So then I'm going to take this, I've got my fused stitching, and my cutout pattern, and I'm going to hold it up on back, and I'm going to kind of hold it up to a window. You can kind of, you know, I've got a window right here. I can see, here, can you see what I'm doing? And I can see where I want my stitching to fall. It's probably hard to see that way. You can sort of see. I want my stitched area to fall kind of in the main body of the snowman, of the flat bottom snowman. So I'm going to kind of eyeball it. I left about, it's probably about 3/4, maybe 5/8 to 3/4 of an inch here at the bottom. And kind of eyeballed it. Is it centered? Is it straight? Yep, I like it. Hold it up to the light one more time. Yep, I like it. Then carefully, I turn it. So my stitching is on the bottom, mat side down. My pattern is on the back, resting on the fusible, the interfacing. Then I'm going to take, I love these Pilot friction erasable pens. You can use a regular pen because you're just cutting it out. I don't know why, I like using these. And I'm just going to trace kind of carefully, you know, follow the edge of the pattern around the edge of this. And you can pin this in place if you want to. You're more than welcome to. And you can see I'm just kind of feathering my strokes as I go around the curves. Now, my bottom is a nice straight edge, so if you'd like to, give you a point of reference, I'm going to, I laid my ruler up there, and I'm going to go like that. All right, so when I take this off, you can see my snowman shape. And if I really did have stitching here, you would be able to see, yep, you would see your stitching through all of the layers, and you would say, yes, that's exactly where I wanted it. If it's not, you know what you can do is, because I use this is either iron erasable, or I can, you know, with a little bit of friction, I can erase it like that, and I can move it, and I can reposition my Santa where I want it to be, or my snowman. Sorry, I have a very bad habit of saying Santa when I mean snowman. So if you hear me say Santa, please know I mean snowman. So here we go. I now can go ahead and cut this out on that line, because as I said, that includes the seam allowance. So I'm going to go ahead and use my ruler and just trim on that straight edge. All right. Then I've got my fabric scissors here, and I'm going to cut on the line. Does it have to be perfect? Are you gonna, like, you know, if your tracing is a little off, you're a little flat here, I'm not gonna worry about that, because it's a snowman. It's a thing of nature. You built it by hand. And there might be, you know, it might be a little curvier on one side. Nobody's perfectly symmetrical. And sometimes you just gotta try. I know this is the scary part for most people, is cutting into that linen after you stitch it. It can be scary for me, especially when I'm doing a finish I kind of have a vision for, but I'm not exactly sure. But anyway, so I'm going to throw that away, and there I am. Now you're going to see that the top corners of my stitching kind of got cut off. Well, I boxed off the stitching area, but, you know, quite frankly, it doesn't go all the way up to that corner. So we're all good. My image still shows. So I'm ready to go ahead, and in the process, I added this. It's hard to see in some cases, but I like kind of layering my finishes so that if you look at it, you go, oh my gosh, what a cute little rickrack border, just that extra little touch of something. So I'm going to talk to you about my rickrack, and we're going to talk about something that is, I don't know, it's not a dirty little secret, but we're going to talk about rickrack into corners. Okay, so I used Lady Dot rickrack, and this color is called Vintage. And I had so much fun playing with the colors. I felt like, you know, these are crisp colors. Those were crisp colors. I just love having that little dot of, you know, it's almost as if it was sitting in the dirty snow. I don't know. To me, it just really kind of, it worked, you know? So I'm going to, here's my piece. All right, I'm going to take a little bit of rickrack, and I'm going to kind of eyeball it, and I'm just going to trim it right here. That's the width of this piece. I'm going to give it a little iron because it does sometimes come out of the package a little wrinkly. That's okay. You can totally iron it. Then I'm going to lay this back down. So you're probably thinking, why is she putting that on the front? Well, I'm putting it on the front because we're going to sew a seam right there. And then that will be then our guide when we actually sew the fabric on the back for where we want our bottom seam to be, because we're going to go right over that stitch. Now, I said I would talk to you a little bit about rickrack into corners. Now you can see I got really lucky and my rickrack went completely edge to edge. All right, I have kind of a little, I hated when I was first using rickrack in ornaments and pillows and things like that. What do you do at the corner? There was always that weird bulge of rickrack at the corner, and who likes that? So one day I was like, you know what? What if it's a little more work? What if, say, if I was doing a square pillow, what if instead of one continuous piece of rickrack all the way around, I used 4 different pieces of rickrack, and I just lay those in, and the rickrack wouldn't necessarily have to go right into the very edge. So the way I have this now, I just laid this. Remember I said I left about 3/4 of an inch here. And I am just very careful. Let's see, hopefully I can pick that up and show you. I laid the rickrack so that the bottom tip just lined up with the bottom of my pattern. And what I did, well, first of all, what we're gonna do is we're gonna sew a line right down the middle, and that will be our seam guide when we go to put the backing on. But if I go into like a 1/4 inch here, as I'm going to do this side seam right here, you'll notice I will hit right at the point of the rickrack. I don't want that, because then when I go to turn it, it's going to be all lumpy bumpy. Same thing over here. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to trim one of those points off. You can also probably just put the rickrack up, but I just want you to know that you can trim it this way. All right. So now you can see that when I go to turn my piece and not turn it, but sew up the side, I'm not going to have part of the rickrack caught in the corner seam and over here. Now you're going to say, well, what if you don't catch that? Well, chances are it does look like I am going to catch it, or you can leave a little bit, you can leave a little bit more of your rickrack. I would rather go back with a little bit of thread and a sharp needle and kind of tuck all that in and do a little whip stitches around it to secure it, than have a lump in my rickrack. That just sounds bad. I don't like lumps in my rickrack. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the camera here, sew across this, and get prepped for putting the backing on and turning it, and this one will be almost done. Okay, so here we are. I have actually sewed right down the middle. I really just eyeballed it right down the middle of my rickrack, and hopefully you can kind of see I made a seam on the a sewing line on the back. We'll use that as our sewing guide when we put the pillow together. And as you can see, I do use a walking foot, but my rickrack, because there's a lot of give to it, I remember how it was kind of close on the edge, like maybe we wouldn't quite catch it. You'll see it did tend to stretch a little bit, and that's okay. That's a good thing. We don't want it to stretch too much because we don't want our bottom to be all wonky. Who likes a wonky bottom? So then what's going to happen is, just to give you some kind of a visual, what's going to happen is you sew on that line, and when you turn it, that's the part that you're going to see. It's just a fun, quick little edge at the bottom. And like I said, you barely see it. Is it worth doing? I think so, because it just gives a little finishing touch on the bottom of your snowman. So I'm ready to go ahead and attach the front snowman to the back of the snowman. And I chose this red fabric, as I discussed. I think I liked it because it was such a wonky plaid. There were look at that. There's really no straight lines to it. That's like my favorite thing about it. So I don't have to worry about, am I lining up and whatnot. So I put right side down, And in this case, I probably would pin it. I would pin when I get over to my sewing machine. I'm going to use a 1/4 inch, my 1/4 inch foot, my walking foot has a 1/4 inch measurement on it. And I am just gonna sew completely around it. Take your time as you go around the curves. And then when you do the bottom, you're gonna use that sewing line you see right there where you attach the rickrack. That will be your guide. I want you to go right in that line. Okay, and you're going completely around it. Now, if you want to, we're going to, I like to turn mine and go through the back and then do this kind of fun treatment on the back. If you don't like doing this way, then leave a little opening down here on the bottom for turning, okay? But I'm going to show you how I go all the way around. So I'm going to turn this off and I'll be right back. Okay, so I sewed all the way around and I just started trimming the backing fabric. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it to match the front. And we're going to do a little bit more trimming. So if you're not exactly dead on, you know, you got time to get a little closer, because we're going to, with curved lines, we're going to do a lot of snipping. Okay, so I'm going to throw that away, and then I'm going to trim my corners a little bit. Remember, don't go too close. We don't want to poke out. Then, now these are my dress, you know, the fabric scissors. I could use these, or I also have these awesome little scissors. Okay, somebody always has to tell me what they are. Oh my goodness. I will look it up once and for all. I guess I need to know, or somebody always tells me what they are. Awesome little scissors. You can get them at your, I got mine at one of my local quilt shops. Great little tips. They're really, they're kind of serrated. So they're great for wool, but I also like the little tips. It's probably time for me to buy another pair. But okay, so the trick to having nice smooth edges on the outside when you do a curved seam is the inside's got to get really, really messy looking. We have to snip, 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 snip. And my feeling is the more snips you can do, the better. I always start first with, I do right into where we almost have like a 45-degree angle. I go into that very close, but not too. That's probably the deepest one. I go into, but not to the seam. And I do both those just so I remember that I did it, okay? Sometimes then I even kind of give it a little, because that's going to be kind of a tight corner. So I trim a little bit away, do that on both sides. And now it's time to just get a little snip happy, get snippy. Maybe that's why. Oh, my mother always said I was sometimes, well, sorry, Mom. She said I was snippy. Oh, I was probably 12. What did I know? But I am going along. I'm going to show you. I'm not going to do this all on camera because you guys will be like, okay, is she done snipping yet? But this is sometimes like you just have to sit down and good scissors, or else if you're fighting with your scissors, oh man, this part is just a nightmare. Okay, now you can see I just went along and I'm going to show you how, hopefully, I don't know if you can see how much I snipped. Get you some idea. And I am going to do that down to here. I'm going to do it on this side, and I'm definitely doing it all around that. The tighter the curve, the more the snips. That's my rule of thumb. And then across the bottom, I'm not going to do it as tight. I'll probably do like maybe every, I don't know, 3/4 inch, something like that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera because I got to get a couple other things ready, and then I'll be right back and we're on to the next step. We are almost done. Yay. Okay, so hopefully you can see now that I have trimmed or snipped all around. It's easier to see on this side. So now I'm ready to turn him inside out because I sewed all the way around it. I need to make a hole in the back. So this is my back side because that's my cotton fabric. The other side is completely white, and yours, you can see you're stitching through it. So I'm going to kind of pull the back up like that. And I've done this in other videos. So let's see. Okay, I made my little opening to go this way because that's how I covered it. And so I'm going to make another little snip, and then I can slide my scissors in there and open it up just a little bit more. All in all, that's probably what, about 2 inches. And I find because this is small, that's big enough to turn. So I'm ready to turn. I usually go to a corner. You could do the head, you could do a corner, and I try and get one of those corners out first. And then gently, gently, gently turn everything. Now everybody kind of has their own, like they like to get a corner completely out, you know, whatever. I just tend to like to get the whole thing turned, and then I carefully work at my corners and my edges. All right, where's the head? Here we go, we got a head, all right. So, so there, we're all turned. Looking pretty iffy there right now. Okay, where's my, I had a, oh, here it is. Knitting needle. I'm not doing much knitting these days, but I sure am using it for other things. So I'm going to gently kind of poke it along the edge to kind of pop that edge out and then get into my corner. Now, when I go into a corner of something, I usually make sure I have a finger out here because I don't want to be just being ever so gentle and poop, pop my, I've done that plenty times. Okay, so I'm into the corner with my knitting needle. I'm going to go back over here. And like I'm kind of, you can sort of see I'm sort of going along the curved edge just to kind of pop that seam out a little bit. You can even kind of pull on the rickrack. I'm going to show you a little close up on that rickrack here in a second. And then, yep, let's see, work this out. And then let's go up into the head. Let's do a little surgery up here. Like I said, I am actually just kind of running the tip of my knitting needle. And you know, if I'm kind of using a big one, so it's blunt, pretty blunt. And I am just going along the edge to kind of push that out. So, and then you can give it a little press. I'll do that. Let me move all this stuff. And I'm going to give it a little press before we stuff it. Okay. All right. So there we go. Ta-da! We've got that flat bottom snowman shape. Are you seeing the snowman a little bit more? If you're not, don't tell me. I don't care. I do care, but you know, it was my vision, may not be yours. Okay, so you can kind of see what happened. My rickrack ended up at the end there. Now this one, we have a little bit popping out. We have a little like raw seam. So you know what then I can do? I can take a sharp needle and a little bit of thread, and I can actually kind of tuck that up, and I can just tack that so that doesn't unravel and come out. And actually, if you look at mine, I have the same thing here. I didn't even do anything with it. I can just give it a little trim and it'll be fine. So, so you have just, but you don't have that wonky corner. And someday I'll do a pillow where I show you like rickrack on all 4 sides. It's a lot of fun. So now you're ready to stuff. Now you can use whatever you want for stuffing. Excuse me. You could use polyfill. I do like to use wool roving, and of course, you know, it's one of those where, and I'll put like where I order mine from. I pull it apart, and I get this big mound of, I look like I have a live sheep here on my work table, and I pick it up and I go into the corners. And I go into the corners, and then I kind of worked on filling the head, and I keep this guy handy because then of course I really work it in there, and I make sure, like, you know, he's pretty, you know, I'm squeezing some Charmin here. He's soft, but he's pretty firm. Okay. So then when I get, I'm not going to go to all the stuffing it. You, like I said, you just little bits. My theory is on stuffing sometimes is, you know, when you think you got them full, just a little more. Okay. But so now you're going, well, what do I do with this? Now I've done videos before. I think it's like 30 or 31, where I showed how I do just like a ladder stitch and I close this up. So I'm not going to redo that because I'm not going to stuff, but you'll get the idea. I think you should know how to stuff a pillow, hopefully. If not, you know, we'll go back to that video. And then I'm just going to take a little bit of thread, knot it, and I'm going to do a ladder stitch to close this up. Now, we don't want the back of our little snowman looking like Frankenstein. or maybe you do. But you'll notice what I did is I did this cute little snowflake on the back. It's a Woolfelt snowflake. So on the in the pattern, in the template that is on the website, you'll notice that there are some snowflakes that look like that, and various sizes, or you can blow them up, you know, that back and forth, that type of thing. So I have a little piece of Woolfelt, all right, and I get mine from Benzie Design, benzie.com, and they have just luscious colors. You can order it by small pieces, you can order by the yard, heck, you can order by the bolt. So I always have a number of colors on hand. I'm actually out of the swan, but I had this pretty blue for demo. So I take, what we need to do with this, guys, we need to get some double-sided fusible on the back of the Woolfelt. But first, we need to get the shape. So I'm going to make sure I have my pattern the right size. So what you're going to do, you know, is hold it up. Once you cut that out, will it cover the scar? Yeah, this is the size that, you know, I was able to use, and it covered the little opening, and yet it fit on the back side. So I'm going to now take this. Once you get this size, all we're going to do is trace with this, and then we're not going to do anything else with this. So where is my, oh, it's right back here. I'm sorry. Couple things you need. You need your template, you need your Woolfelt, you need some freezer paper, and then you need a little double-sided fusible interfacing. All right. First thing we're going to do is trace the snowflake onto there's two sides of the freezer paper. There's a shiny side and a flat side. This is the side that we can draw on. So I'm going to lay this underneath, and I'm literally just going to, trace along the snowflake, the edge. And, you know, you want to be precise, but it doesn't have to be, you know, to go pretty quickly. Because where you're going to be precise is later with the scissors. Sorry, this is going to take a little bit, but our snowflake has a few little details on it. I love this snowflake. I've used it for a couple closures of little pillows for different classes. I actually sometimes teach this technique in a class, so you're really kind of getting a class here. I hope it helps you. And you can use this technique on something else. So there you see, on the flat side of the freezer paper, I drew my snowflake. I'm going to cut this and make this a little bit smaller, so we don't need all that. All right. So then the next thing, I prepared my pattern on my freezer paper. Now I'm going to prepare my Woolfelt. All right, this is definitely where we want to make sure that the iron is not turned all the way up. I'm going to make sure I can't see from, yeah, I would like it probably more like on wool silk as opposed to linen cotton. Because I do find that the double-sided fusible can actually burn easier than other. I don't know why that is. Plus, I will also say, if I have this for a long period of time, this can, I guess, I don't know how to say it, but go bad. I don't know if it's the chemicals on it or what. But I'm going to cut a piece that I make sure is definitely a little larger than my pattern. I'll just cut it with that. And this, again, has paper on one side. You can hear it. And then this is kind of a gummier side. So that's the side we're going to iron on first on the back side of my Woolfelt. Okay, same thing. It doesn't matter which side it goes on. But I'm kind of centering it. Actually, I'm going to put it over here. I like to conserve my Woolfelt a little bit. So I'm going to put this over here, gummy side down. I'm going to iron it in place. Same rules apply for when you're doing the lightweight. Don't move your iron around a whole lot. You don't want it to move on you. And I should have left that in place a little bit. Make sure it does. Sometimes it can get tricky. You want it hot enough, but not too hot. Okay, I'm gonna do it again over here. I count to that magical 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know why, that's just what I've done over the years. I give it a little extra on this side. Okay, so now you can see I've got my paper backing here. The sticky side is down. So then what I want to do is take my freezer paper, the shiny side down, and I'm going to iron it onto the other side of the wool felt. Okay, but you got to make sure that you're hitting an area where it's adhered with the double-sided. So I'm pretty sure that's why I kind of made it bigger probably than I needed to, but I wanted to make sure I hit the right area. I'm going to hit that again with the iron. With freezer paper, you don't have to do it as long. I mean, literally, yeah, I'm done. So there's my layers, the double-sided fusible, wool felt, and then the pattern. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it out. These are, and oop, I don't want to be using that. Well, okay, I'm going to use it anyway. Tell you why. All these have to go get sharpened. It's been a while. And my guy who does scissor sharpening is open again. Yay! So I'm cutting out kind of on the very outside edge. All right, you can sort of see what I did there. See, there's the pattern. Wool felt sandwiched in there. Double-sided fusible on the back. Okay, now I'm going to go in with these. And I'm going to do my little delicate bits of, and this is when you can go in and you can really, whoop, all those things are flying everywhere. I'll find one in my hair later on tonight. And this, you know, I'm using my lines that I drew, but I'm kind of actually making it a little, squaring it up a little bit better, that type of thing. So you can see I'm going in, I went in and I'm cutting it out. This is, you know, kind of looks detailed, but it's actually really not that bad. There are some that get quite detailed. So hopefully I can do all this and not bore you to tears. And you'll see, yep, my double-sided fusible is still on the back. I'm only gonna do this once, I promise, guys. I ended up doing it twice, obviously, to do both snowmen, but I will only do it on camera once. It's always fun to have a room full of students and they're all doing this. I can kind of see like who, you know, some like just, they get really quiet and they like to concentrate, and you can tell, oh, you know, they were probably a good art student and, you know, follow the rules. And then there's some that it's like, you can tell they were free spirits. They're like, yeah, you know, they're cutting all over the place. It's just, I so enjoy teaching in a classroom with needle workers. I miss it. Hopefully we get back to that in the new year. I'm almost there because now I'm sort of rambling. And you can see my template is coming off a little bit. That's okay. I'm holding it in place with my fingers. And it's all good. I'm almost done. Especially with something this small, it's easy for it to come up. That's okay. I'm not concerned about as concerned about this template coming up. I'm more concerned, I wouldn't want the double-sided fusible to come up. We need that part to stick. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. I'm going in there and you can give it a little trim. I think in one of my other videos I said I felt kind of like a closet hairstylist. I think this makes me feel the same way. Okay, so I've done everything and I just lifted that off. But get all the little niches out of there. So there's the front of my snowflake. But on the back, as you can see, it still has the paper. That's the double-sided fusible. So this is the kind of the fun part. So now, in you know, a couple of my points aren't quite square or pretty. So now's when I kind of want to go back in and touch them up a little bit. Give a little haircut. See, it's that closet hairstylist in me. I would rather have the opportunity to come back and trim a little now than to try and go, whoops, I cut too much. You don't want to do that. Okay. So pretend, okay, here's what it's going to look like. This is stuffed and we've laced this back together, and I'm going to peel the back of the fusible off. And so it's hard to see, but hopefully you can maybe see there's like a sheen to the back. You know, there's the front of my, you know, nice matte finish. And then the back has sort of a sheen to it. As I get later in the day with this video, the lighting's getting different in here. So then what I'm going to do is, again, stuffed, laced. I'm going to lay this on top, and I'm going to go over to my iron and hold it down and iron that into place. Now, if you want to do a little, do some little embellishments, do some embroidery stitches, add some beads. You could do a little applique stitch around the edge, a little buttonhole, that kind of thing. Or you can just leave it kind of plain, just like that. Just real sweet and simple. All right, so then the final, now we are really in the home stretch now. At this point, if you want to like maybe put a couple little buttons or beads on for eyes, maybe a little Woolfelt nose, this is a great time to do it. Also, then I gave my little snowman a scarf, and it was funny. I actually had this really dull scarf on him, and I was like, man, something's just not working quite right. So I found this gray and white, it's actually seersucker, in my stash. And I don't even know what I used it for, but I literally just ripped it. I mean, like ripped it. I gave it a, if you go with the grain, I give it a little snip on this end, and then, whoop, I need to snip some more. Nope, sorry, that wasn't the grain. Oh my goodness. Yeah, well, you know. Is that the edge? No, this should work. You should just be able to snip it and then start ripping it. Yeah, look, see how easy it is? Go with the grain. Yep, there we go. I needed just a little bit more of a snip. And I just pulled it across the width, and then I took some of the really long strings off. I played with this a couple times just to figure out exactly how wide I wanted my my scarf to be. And then I did go and iron it, just flatten it a little bit. And then I literally just tied it around his neck, because, you know, he has to stay warm. So there you go. That is your first snowman. This is the First Frost Deer, your flat bottom snowman. Okay, I'm going to turn the camera off here, get ready for your next snowman, and we'll get finishing him. Okay, now we're back, and we are ready to finish the First Frost Row snowman. And again, you'll notice that I used the vintage rickrack from Lady Dot, and I used a little bit more from that fabric line, Tahoe Ski Week by Mara Penny. And then I've also got another, look how fast I am. I stitched another one very quickly. So the construction on this one is a little different because I did incorporate fabric on the bottom. And to be honest, I didn't originally have fabric planned for here. But when I went to go buy the backing fabric for these, and I found that, I thought, oh, I could just, it's like, I just saw it. I just saw the fact that there would be this pattern on the bottom because it just went so well with the colors. And then, like I said, then that little bit of just grungy, the vintage rickrack in there just sort of, just gave it a little extra look, you know. I almost said kick, like I was emerald or something like that. Anyway, so again, here's my pattern. Go to the website, print those off, make sure I give what the measurement should be, 6 3/4 and 7 7/8. Then I've got my stitching here. Now with this one, we're actually, before we trace any kind of pattern on here, before we attach any kind of fusible, I'm going to attach my rickrack and my extra piece of fabric. Now I've got this cut, it's probably about 5 by the width of my fabric by 10, you know, it goes something like that. But I am, because I just sort of cut it, I am going to give myself a nice straight edge. So let me grab my ruler. And again, this is a nice scatter print, so I don't have to be really concerned, am I on the line, that kind of thing. So I love working with prints like that. So see, I gave myself a nice straight edge, and I'm going to cut some more rickrack. And I'm going to go across the width this time. So I don't have to worry this time about, you know, the whole corner turning thing, because we're going to go just straight across and it's going to disappear into the seam. So I cut a little bit. Let's give it a little bit of a press again. Got a little iron over here with one of my little wool mats. I love those things. Oop, turn it back up. Okay. So I am ready to, now here's the bottom edge of my stitching, and I like the tip of my rickrack to kind of be, it was pretty close. That's maybe about between 1/8 and 1/4 inch from the bottom of the stitched image. So I'm going to just kind of lay that there. If you want to pin it, that's fine. And then I'm going to go over to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew right down the middle. Now, while I'm there, then what I'll do is I will trim the bottom. I'll trim this off. Then I'll have a straight edge, and I've got my straight edge, and I can line those up. My straight edge is up, and I'm going to sew right on that same line. Okay? So then when this gets folded down, again, you've got that little bump of rickrack showing at the top. Okay, I'm going to go get that done and I'll be right back to show you. All right, so here I am back with the full piece now. As I said, I sewed through the middle of the rickrack, and then I trimmed a little bit of the linen. It's kind of close to the rickrack, and then I lined up my 2 straight edges. It just gives me a nice guide. And then I went back and sewed right through the previously sewn rickrack line, and then I'm gonna give it a press. I actually trimmed it a little bit more. You can do like 1/4 to 3/8, and then I pressed it so that the rickrack came up and then the cotton fabric came down. Okay, remember there's my stitching area. If you wanted to, and you wanted your rickrack to face down instead of up, you certainly could do that. That's very easy at that point. So now I'm ready to go ahead, and I applied a piece of that same lightweight fusible to the back of my whole piece. All right, that's before we cut out our pattern. So I'm laying that right side down. Again, smooth side, nubby side, lightweight, featherweight, t-shirt weight. And I just kind of center it over there. I don't have anything hanging out beyond the edge of the fabric. Bring it over here. And I'm going to attach that. Now, it's going over the seam with the rickrack and everything. That's okay. If I was doing like a big, maybe something more formal, I wouldn't have that pressing over that. But for something this small, it will be okay. Some would have you cut 2 pieces of the fusible and then go right to the edge. Right to the seam, so that you didn't have any extra bulk in there. But honestly, this is so thin, I will be fine. Okay, and I'm just kind of pressing it down in different spots. And making sure we get a nice activation of the fusible, the little glue dots. All right, I'm gonna turn it over this side. Yeah, looks like we're doing well here. I tend to press it mostly on the back side. I don't really like to too often press right on my my stitching, but sometimes it just needs a little bit just to make sure we hit it all nice and clear, nice and clean. Sorry, I am stumbling over my words a lot today. I apologize for that. A lot of this I'm just kind of doing I didn't write a script for this one. I just do this as I go. This is, you know, this is my process. So my apologies if I'm kind of stumbling a little bit today. It's also the end of the week. Okay, so I think I'm in good shape. My iron kind of turned off, so it's a little cool. So here we go. You can see I've got the back and I'm all covered up now with the lightweight fusible, still pretty pliable. So I am ready to get my pattern piece. We do the same thing, except now instead of holding it up under the linen, treat this all as basically one piece. So I'm gonna hold this up behind it, and I'm gonna see, I've got my right side and I've got my window over here, and I'm just gonna see where I want, see how much fabric I want to show. And I didn't have a ton showing. I had maybe, that's maybe like 1.5 inches, something like that. Of course I lost a quarter inch of it because of the seam allowance. So yeah, I'm pretty centered there. See, I can kind of see what I did. I hold it in place and I like where it is. And again, I get that little pen, my friction pen. Hope I'm saying that right. And I just kind of go around it again with that kind of just some feathery stitches. I'm sorry, not stitches. I got stitching on the brain. It's been kind of a crazy week because we're getting ready for our first ever virtual market. The Nashville market was canceled for the year, and so a different company sponsored a virtual show. So I've been getting my booth ready. I've been getting all sorts of things. Yesterday was the big communique to shops and whatnot. So my brain is in about 50 different places right now. So probably that's why I'd say some of my wording is a little funny. All right, so I traced all around it, and there you go. And you can kind of see like that's about how much of the fabric that's gonna show at the bottom, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and cut this out, just like I did last time on the last one. The seam allowances included. And I'm not going to go through all the steps. We're really at this point, we're doing it the same way as we did the flat bottom snowman, but I do want to cut it out so that you can kind of see what it looks like when it's all cut out. And hopefully that visual helps you. Hopefully these tutorials are helping you. They're helping me because I love to teach, and I want to do some classes at some point, some online classes. I definitely want to get back to teaching in person. I love, you know, visiting with stitchers, seeing what they're working on. It's so much fun. Okay, so I colored on the lines, or I drew on cut on the lines, and that's what the front of it's going to be. So there's my stitching. And then for this model, I used the same wonky plaid fabric, but in the blue version. So I would get a piece of that, cut a little square of that. Let's just say that's my square. And I would put right sides together. And again, you could sew all the way around and leave an opening to turn. Or you could sew all the way around completely, cut the back like we did, you know, for this one. This little guy right there, and then you'll snip. You snip right very close, as close as you possibly can, but not to the seam on his neck. And then you'll do your little snips, and then you'll turn him inside out, stuff him, and then if you did him this way, now you'll notice with him I did his in white Woolfelt, his snowflake closure, and then it's a little bit bigger. So you can play with I think I might have either put 2 different sizes of these snowflakes on the template, or play with the sizing. Like if you have like a printer that'll reduce and enlarge and that kind of thing, or maybe like a Kinko's or something like that that'll let you do that. Anyway, so that was finished the exact same way as we finished that one. And so go back and review how we put the double-sided fusible on the back of the white wool felt in this case. And then I traced the pattern onto freezer paper, and then ironed the freezer paper onto the opposite side of the wool felt, trimmed it all out, peeled the double-sided fusible paper, and ironed it down. And again, with this one, I just left it nice and kind of plain, but you can definitely add to it little buttons or beads or applique stitches, that kind of thing. And mine, I will tell you, has a little bit of a hitch right here and here, because as I was telling you in the beginning, this was kind of like my original final model. And then I did actually finish it this way with the rounded bottom with the fabric. Well, then I kind of nestled it into the bowl or the basket, what I had intended, and it started going just like that. So I came in and I just I unstuffed him, you know, turned him back around, and then closed out, or it basically ran a straight seam across the bottom, trimmed it, turned it, the whole time probably saying my prayers so that so that it would come out okay. And I think it did. And quite frankly, you know, I got a couple little hitches right here, but you know what? It sets in a basket. You don't even see that. It's just that little hint of fabric, of pretty coordinating fabric, and the vintage trim that just kind of, you know, makes you want to stop and peek at it a little bit. And of course, the beautiful design. Yes, I know I designed it, so I probably shouldn't say that, but these both are really, truly some of the most favorite things I think I've ever designed. They were just everything from the colors to the, just the way it all came out, and with the way they came out with the finish as well. Same thing on this guy. Now this one I just did a simple little square knot. This one I felt like he needed a little dressier. He was a little jauntier in his size and shape, so I gave him a little bow. And again, you could put two little eyes up there. So hopefully this helps you get through the process if you want to finish these like mine. Or even if you just want to do some kind of a fun shaped pillow. It's really not that hard. You just have to be willing to, you know, cut into that linen. And as I said earlier, that's sometimes the hardest thing to do. So I guess I've kind of said my closing without even coming back on camera. So I think I'm actually just going to go ahead and end it here. Thank you for spending the time with me, and enjoy the stitch. And oh gosh, years from now, we'll look at this and go, First Frost. Yeah, 2021 was a tough winter, but hopefully this made it a little more enjoyable and brighter. So enjoy the stitch and the finish.